Good to go, guys.
Good to go? Okay. Welcome, everybody, to the June 25th Buncombe County Home and Community Care Block Grant Advisory Committee meeting. Today's agenda is in front of us. Primarily, we are going to be finalizing the allocation of supplemental aging funds provided graciously by the county. So first agenda item is housekeeping. So are there any revisions to the agenda? Hearing no revisions. Agenda is approved. Meeting minutes, any corrections, deletions? Hearing none, the minutes are approved. Okay, looking at our funding for the last few months of the fiscal year 2025. I know Zach is probably tearing his hair out at the end of the fiscal year, trying to reallocate all the funding. So Zach, I don't know if you would have any comments, maybe update on the area agency on aging, the nutrition, the congregate meal site.
Yeah, so the Council on Aging of Buncombe County was affected pretty heavily by Helene. They still have their Black Mountain site closed down. They have also been using their ARPA funding, trying to get it spent by the end of the fiscal year. ARPA is American Rescue Plan Act funding that they received through us. And with that funding comes some leniency on rules and things like that. So one of those is that they can provide grab and go meals. And so at that Lakeview site, they're having to switch their units from Home and Community Care Block Grant to ARPA, which are those grab and go meals, which is also why they're pretty low in the congregate nutrition. But they are hoping to return back to normal soon enough and hopefully expend their full allocation next year.
And Billy, maybe you can update on the United Community Development. That money is just going to be reallocated.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, United Community Development,
Mhm.
they only did one project.
Yeah.
And, so the committee had decided to split it between the three providers that had emailed me
Mhm.
about, getting additional funding, and that was Jewish Family Services, Mountain Care and Meals on Wheels. So Zach and I were gonna meet and talk about distributing the funding, and I think Zach has new information too, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
So there is, well, with the relinquishing of that, there's going to be probably not much relinquishing elsewhere other than Council on Aging. Most of it's just going to be shoring up, making sure that everybody's 100% spent. However, there has been some funding that has come available for the end of year, and it's going to Buncombe County, and that's roughly around $50,000. So that will get allocated to those individuals you see on here that are way overspent. They can be probably distributed amongst the three that were already decided on, unless you want to add anybody else to that mix.
I'm confused by what you said. Is it that, are you saying that 50,000 is going to be, is it only going to those three?
Well, what was decided before was that the relinquished of the United Community Development would go to those three agencies, potentially along with the congregate nutrition relinquished dollars. However, there's an additional 50,000 that has become available that was not allocated to Buncombe County that will be most likely moved into Buncombe County. So we can still go with these three, providers that are overspent, or we can add additional providers into that reallocation.
So given that, good news, let's see, we look at Meals on Wheels, they are 125% overspent as of May. Jewish Family Services is, whoa,
Yeah.
405.
There is a change
Second
to,
line. Yeah.
there is a change to Jewish Family Services as well. I
Okay.
believe they submitted a rate reduction. Essentially what happened was for years prior,
Mhm.
mental health counseling has been a non-unit service. At the beginning of this fiscal year, it was supposed to be a unit-based service. However, ARMS, our lovely system at the state,
It's older than dirt.
yeah, it kept them as a non-unit service until April, where it suddenly switched them to a unit-based service, and they were realizing the drawdown of all of this funding, and their unit rate and everything does not reflect the average cost of a unit. So they are looking to reduce that to 55. I can't remember exactly. I believe it was sent to Allison. Was that you? Did that get sent to Jewish Family Services, their unit rate change?
I don't know. Who would have sent it to me?
Either Liz or Michael.
Yeah, I think.
Because they sent it to us. Y'all get so many emails that I probably forward it right on to whoever it needs to go to.
Cause I'm looking at the unit rate right now is $153
Yeah.
and 91 cents.
Oh, here it is.
You got it.
They are looking to reduce it to
What was the date on that, Zach?
June 20th,
Okay.
this past Friday, $54, 0536. And so hopefully what that will do is they'll still be fully spent in their allocation. But it will reduce that overage significantly.
Mhm.
So it's basically an arithmetic adjustment.
Yeah.
So what were the three agencies again that we decided we,
Jewish Family Services, right? Meals on Wheels,
right,
and Mountain Care.
and then,
Yeah.
And that was for the United Community Development Funding and leftover
Right.
congregate nutrition.
So,
Oh, I guess it wasn't sent to you.
Okay, thank you. I was like, I don't remember that at all, but maybe I missed it. Okay.
okay, so it was,
Thank you.
That's totally my fault. I didn't realize you weren't CC'd in on that. Now you.
okay. So, Zach, am I correct when I look at this chart for May, that the very top line for Council on Aging, the 83,924 is what has not been spent to date?
To date, yes.
And then for, down in the non-unit services area, the community housing and home improvement is 15.
Correct.
So that's roughly, say, 84 and 15, so 99,000. Right? Am I doing the math right?
yes.
Now, historically, we've also included fiscal legal in providing, the dollars that are not spent, just as a sidebar. And with the 50,000 additional, so Zach, remind me, with the Home and Community Care Block Grant, if Buncombe County doesn't spend all theirs, or don't reallocate. Isn't there the ability to give it, not give it, but allocate it to the other counties in the region?
Mhm.
Okay. So do you have any clue if the other counties need this additional funding? I mean, I don't want to give things away, but I'm just looking at, we have 99 plus 50, which is, like a lot of,
150.
yeah.
Well, I will say that I heard today in a meeting that, if we're talking about Meals on Wheels, that Haywood County has 80 people on their waiting list. And I don't know what's contributing to that, but if we're talking about other people needing money, I'm just gonna throw that out there.
But Haywood County isn't in region B.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean,
Their region A.
Well, we
Yeah.
have people on our wait list too, don't we? Are there people on Meals on Wheels wait list here too, as well? Yeah. Well, we have a lot.
so the region B is Transylvania, Henderson, Madison, and Buncombe, right?
Mhm.
Yeah,
Okay.
so,
I mean, in regards to can other counties use it? I believe Madison will be made whole with just their internal funding, whatever is left there. May get offered to Henderson. Transylvania has a significant amount of funding that has not even been allocated for the year. So that would be probably given to Henderson as well. So I was trying to make it fair by giving 50 to y'all and roughly 50 to Henderson as well. And then if it can't be used within the counties, then it gets tossed up to the state.
so, and again, you need to remind me, if they have been budgeted for, say, like Meals on Wheels. They've already used the 180, so you could basically. It's not like they're capped, if they've used their money and they're showing you that they have overspent. So to speak.
Mhm.
Can you provide more to them than what they overspent?
I can't provide more to them than what they overspend. I can provide them exactly what they overspend.
Okay,
But you can't, there's no slush fund per se. So it has to be accounted for, and that's why we tell them to continue putting your units in arms, because at the end of the year, we do reach these moments where I'm gonna look at those percentages, and that's gonna be where that funding goes.
If we took. I'll call it a surplus, it's not really, if we took that 150,000 and made whole basically everyone here who's overspent. How much of that money will get sucked up?
It's a good question.
Because I think the first pass through this. The logical thing, it seems, is to say, okay, we know there's enormous need. With all the complications of Helene and whatnot. We have agencies that are overspent, maybe the first step is to make them all whole. And then see what we have after that.
2 seconds, I can rattle off some numbers if someone will write them down. Page here, Buncombe County, okay. 53,087. This may change because this is that Meals on Wheels rate, but 416, sorry. 47,416.
47,106, no,
416.
400.
4821.
48,021.
No, 48, 4,821. 3,741. 28,407. And 33,484. And that's the dollar amount of units served but not reimbursed. Somebody wants to read that back to me, I can calculate that, y'all.
Okay, $53,087. $57,416. 4,821. 3,741. 28,407. And 33,484.
$170,000. And with the reduction of the unit rate for Jewish Family Services, that may put us right there at that.
Mhm.
150.
Excellent idea, Suzanne.
Yeah. that-
And that doesn't
We're making
include,
everybody whole.
let's see. Oh, never mind, hold on.
That'll leave 20,000 short somewhere, but that is.
Yeah, but if the rate adjustment for Jewish Family Services comes in, then it would bring it down to around 150, right?
Yeah. And then this is going off of numbers as of May. Everything's going to go up in June. So even the congregate nutrition, they're gonna have to serve meals this month. So that's gonna get used up some. I don't think United Community, I think United Community Development is done. And then some of these others that haven't been reimbursed fully, the adult day health and in-home aid level 2, there may be some internal shuffling, but it may not give us a ton of surplus.
Do I hear a motion? I mean,
I move to distribute a surplus and make everybody whole to the extent that we can, indelicately put.
Second.
all in favor? Aye. Very good. Okay.
What about a motion for the rate change for Jewish Family Services?
Well, it sounds like it's already been submitted, so.
It's been submitted, but it hasn't been ruled on by y'all, I don't think.
We accept it.
I second.
Okay. With that change, thusly.
Unexpected good news. So, making people whole, that is good, that is good. That is good.
Especially given this last year.
Yes, especially given this last year, if you haven't heard, we didn't hear what Suzanne said. So on to the supplemental aging fund report. As you may recall, the county has indicated that there will be no reshuffling of funds, so that if any funding that is not utilized will go back to the general fund. So there's not really much to discuss, I don't think, unless anybody has comment about any of these providers for this, for the, on the report and the level of spend.
Well, I met with Lunatic yesterday to do a monitor report, and they're not gonna be spending the rest of their funding, 9,176, because in their contract, they said they would provide up to 17 sessions, and they made good progress. Starting in January, they've done 16 sessions for their elder club, but unfortunately, where they were having it at Emma Fellowship Church, it got bought out by Orchard Church of Haywood County, so they can't have that last session because they don't have a hosting space. I did meet them at Riverside Baptist church where they were doing food distribution and, they're looking into that location for, the elder club, but they've made great progress with that elder club. I mean, they've been doing lots of great programs for, the Latina elders and, it's like very good programs. And, the elders have gotten a lot out of it and, they can't wait to go back. And, even like Norma Brown, the executive director, told me that at the last meeting, there was rumors that ICE was gonna be there and she told the elders about that and they still wanted to come to the meeting. And she said to her, that was a testimony how well, we see this club was, because they provide everything from chair yoga to, fall prevention to, classes about chronic disease, depression, just a whole host of things that, and they, and Norma's saying that one of the highlights that they liked is that there are people of different income levels and education levels, and they're all like meeting each other where they are and they've all become friends.
So socialization.
Yes, the
Yes.
socialization
yeah.
has been wonderful, so. It was a really great visit.
Well, excellent, excellent. I applaud them because they are, this is their first year of funding.
Yeah, and I asked them, was there anything that I could have done differently to support them? Because it took them till January, but of course, the hurricane affected, so. And, you know, Zach's always available to the HCCBG funded providers, and I'm always available to the Buncombe County funded providers, so.
No, I feel good about that program, Mike. I like that we are reaching that population.
And Working Wheels, they'll spend, they didn't submit an invoice for May, but they had one final car repair to meet, their target, so that's gonna be submitted in June. And then in-home aid, I think a couple of the in-home aid agencies, use their HCCBG allocation, so there might be some more spent in June, right? Yeah,
It's gonna have to be pulled from what kind of stuff.
and Blue Ridge Pike said they were gonna spend their rest of their funding too.
Well, that's good to hear. That's all good news, yeah. So I guess that's a good segue to our next task. And before we do get started, Billy and I have, and I think we've mentioned in this meeting before that there is concern that, you know, some folks that are new providers may not understand all the commitment they have when they do contract with the county. And so, given that, plus the fact that the money was gonna go back to the county, and if they didn't use it, and perhaps raising the specter of that they don't need it, which that's not true. Billy prepared this document, which I believe I sent out to everyone with the handouts. And I thought it was well done and very concise. So I feel that's a step forward in supporting new providers that come on board. So Billy, we really appreciate that.
Oh, well, Allison prompted me.
Well, I think it'll be helpful. You
Yeah,
did work
and I
on it, so.
I mean, I had a lot of people that applied, for the Buncombe County Supplemental Agency, they called me this time and I mean, I do get a call, but I tell people what the requirements are just so so they know, and then we thought it'd be helpful to put it in a document so that they could have something to see and
Refer to.
refer to.
I agree, I agree. So, given the extremely compressed timeline that we had, I was pleased to see so many applicants. Most of them we are familiar with, for those of us who've been on the committee for a little bit. The three new people, although the Center for Conscious Living and Dying did submit the block grant. The other new applicant was the Community Health and Wellness Collective Services, and then the last new person was Better Together Transportation. So what I have done is, and if I've missed anybody, I apologize, but I put, like we've done in the past. We've just put everybody's recommendations and averaged them out. And you'll see on your paper at the bottom right corner, the bottom line is we only need to cut about a little over $26,000. So I don't know, perhaps starting with the new folks in looking at, we look at the Community Health and Wellness Collective Services, which is number 11, row 11.
Can I say something?
Oh, sure.
With the last funding decisions, the HCCBG funding decisions, I did get a couple phone calls from community members, and I just want to remind everyone that these meetings are being live streamed, and some of the comments I heard is when you say what your final allocation is, it would be helpful to know why you made that decision. Because some of the community members were wondering, like, I'm just gonna give you an example. I mean, you need to look at the pattern of spending, so someone asked, why did you give the congregate nutrition more money than someone that is usually overspent? So they wanted to know the reason, and I said, well, I'll make sure that for each of the categories, that there's a reason why averages are good, but there has to be a reason, because people are watching this and they want to know.
Well, I can address the fact that, yes, I was contacted via email by one of our providers. And I expressed that this has been a difficult year and that the committee is looking at priorities, and the priorities have shifted. So it's hard being in these chairs.
Right.
And as much as, and we can provide as much support in letting people know why our decisions were made. So shall we go? And
Can I add just one thing to that I think what you said fits, but reminds me of maybe once we're through this, we could spend some time talking about our priorities. You know, because we all have them, we've talked about what they might look like, but just and spend some time fleshing them out further, so people who want to know and understand what are the values and that we apply to making these decisions. Not just values, priorities.
mhm.
Food and housing and transportation to doctor's appointments, things like that.
And I think one of the things that I was noticing as I was looking through, every time that we go through and we look at the grant applications, we do have like a kind of like a Likert scale that we answer, or a scale that we answer on. where would they land on, you know, their inclusion statement? And where would they land on their budget? It's very subjective and not really objective. So is there an opportunity for us to maybe grade it differently with the next go round according to like what our priorities are, which is like for food and access to medical care or transportation or whatever we determine priorities are and where we feel like that lands instead of kind of a grade on how well they wrote out a budget.
Yeah, the scoring in the grant application system, what you're really scoring is how well somebody writes a grant.
Yeah.
You know, we're not in a position to evaluate how they conduct their mission. How efficient are they? How well organized are they? How tight is their financial management? We don't have access to that. And all of these programs have legitimate purpose. And for myself, I know I have found the last few years, when there's so much need and growing need, and the resources are so limited, you know, I've taken, you know, in my own head, sort of a hard, like, okay, who's gonna starve to death? You know, what is the program that has the most impact on somebody's ability to get through another day or another month? And that's a hard way to look at it, but I think it's necessary.
Well, I like the idea that Dan, you know, let's set aside, perhaps even next meeting, is to set what our priorities are. And then perhaps even look at that scoring, 'cause maybe it's time to review the scoring tool. Because we've been using that scoring tool for a while.
Certainly this last year's been an anomaly, so it's really hard to compare it to anything else. But it seems like as we got through this year, there became a theme which I was agreeable with. So we had like sustenance and enrichment kind of. And enrichment is nice in many ways, but compared to sustenance.
Yeah.
You know, we're talking about survival, like access to medical care, food, those things, you know, so we kind of had to squeeze down and prioritize a little bit based on limited funding that we were dealing with, those kind of things. So we kind of did come to that. We may want to reassess that if our funding is back to normal the next year with highway natural disasters. But it seems like that kind of did come out as a result of going through this process this time.
And I think just as I'm listening, thinking, you know, the whole business. You know, we've got different language for it, but sustenance in terms is one way to look at it, that you know, we're talking about. What keeps people in their homes, what keeps them safe, what keeps them engaged. And deals with what we know are the challenges of aging. But that's where you get into some, there's room for preventive things, but the sustenance things are really important. Maybe more.
And I think too, from the cost savings perspective, you think about how much cost savings there is to our community if you're able to allow an aging person to age in place in their home versus becoming so debilitated and so sick because they don't have access to medical care or proper nutrition, and then they end up in a nursing home or the hospital or the ER. So I think it's prudent for us to be making those decisions with the money. I mean, it's small, that is the prudent thing to do.
But I think, not to, I mean, yes, keeping them in their homes, but I think if you look at legal services like PISCA, they help people, you know, avoid, eviction.
Right.
So, you know, there's, yeah, and so it's very nuanced, it's very difficult decision. And I encourage folks, to reach out to Billy, and Billy can communicate to me and just talk on an individual basis. I mean, I think we've all gone through this enough. We all kind of have we know our priorities. When I look at the allocations, it's it's almost like we're kind of in sync for the most part.
Yeah.
If you look at the, you know, if you look at, let's go, just look at the first line, which is in-home aid. Members A through F, I mean, they're almost all identical except for one. So, I mean, that's, and I see that again in, the day stay, the respite. So I think, you know, we might not be too far away from being able to give our priorities, to be able to articulate our priorities at the next meeting to give it some more clarity for the folks who are submitting.
And also for a case like Pisco Legal, part of our decision last month was predicated on the fact or the understanding that they have a lot of sources of funding that our other agencies typically don't. And so if there was one agency that you'd like to fund but can't fund because the funds are so limited, that's the one that I perceive to have the most robustness, if you will. You know, they're not gonna shut their doors if we don't fund them. They're not gonna like it if we don't fund them. It's a lot of money to them. I understand that, but you know, our other agencies are not that well endowed generally. And that was why here, you know, I kind of took that approach with Pisco Legal. I figured, you know what? The logic, I think, still holds, so I didn't allocate any money for them, but.
But you should apply that logic to someone like Mountain Mobility who gets.
Well, mountain mobility is another story,
I know,
and I
but
think we will need to
Right.
discuss that, because
Right.
that is something that. For folks who aren't aware, are somewhat forgetful like myself. Mountain Mobility had an agreement several years ago that they would get $50,000, no, $500,000 of block grant money. Or and I don't know how that happened,
It's because there wouldn't be supplemental aging funds without it.
Okay.
Because that was my understanding is the deal was, it was to use the $500,000. Give it them that through HCCBG so that then we had $500,000 to be able to fund these other providers who don't qualify or need extra or whatever from HCCBG. So otherwise, if that money wasn't being given, then there wouldn't have been supplemental aging funds, is my understanding,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Jen worked on that, yeah.
So. How do I say this? I would like to, in the next go round, to have some discussion with Mountain Mobility and say, hey, you know, maybe we need to revisit that.
Where are they on?
Well, the county contractor, yeah.
They are not on this one because it's, they got block grant money.
Okay,
Yeah, they got, this is only supplemental funds,
okay.
so.
But if they can produce a document. Saying. that
If they can produce a document saying that we have to give them the $500,000, then it's a done deal. If it doesn't exist, it doesn't exist. So then, I think I want to kick that can down the road.
You can ask Jen who you talked to specifically to make that deal,
Yeah.
if it was
Well,
that or
Well, I think we could talk to Matt Cable about
try to
that
get
because,
clarity on that, yeah.
yeah.
Cause he wanted more, I mean, he was saying that the amount of money is actually not adequate anymore based on. I just remember, based on how prices, things have gone out, the number of people that need the service and all that kind of thing, but.
But I think then there's the other question that we bring up is, are they getting funding from anywhere else? And have they explored that as another option?
Well, I think they get Department of Transportation funds. I'm not positive about this, but I think I want to be I don't wanna get too off track with mountain mobility, because I wanna try to focus on getting this done today.
Yeah.
Mountain mobility will kick down, that we can put that on the agenda for next month, or even the month after, depending on how we can get to whomever at mountain mobility. So,
Susan,
yes, sir.
I'm just thinking. We're talking about reevaluating our processes, basically. Sounds like it's how we want to do things, and we have like 6 meetings left this year. So somehow if we can kind of. Knock a little bit of that out each time, gradually develop. What we want our, I don't know, if it's a rubric or what we're gonna call it, or our criteria, so that. So the end of the year. Just before the grant cycle begins, that we refined or revamped if we want to. I'm not exactly sure the questions to ask, but I'm just thinking, we got 6 months to kind of, if we need to reevaluate or.
So-
Refine that process to have it ready, so when the grant cycle begins, like. When they open, January is when they open,
Well,
so if we have it done by the holidays, basically.
right,
That we get ready for when that.
yeah. And what I'm hearing when you say that is, we should develop, almost like a schedule. Over the next, like, the meeting topics for the next 6 months. And firm that up in terms of, does it meet? Whatever the topics need to be in order to get to where we wanna be.
Yeah.
I don't know what they are right now off the
Right.
top of my head, but we talked about priorities. And we talked about, mountain mobility. I mean, every year we've been, looking at the application, maybe it's, time to look at the scoring tool.
I mean, one of the questions we probably ask is, often people have been funded in the past, therefore. At some point, we decided they were worthy of being funded, so they're automatically in. And how do we handle someone who's never applied before, often it's like, well, we decided these people were. Good to go and have a valid. Service they're providing, so. If that's, so is that still good for new people? Well, because the problem is, the funding is flat and the need is growing, so how do we address that?
You're preaching to the choir on that one.
Yeah,
The
Gotcha.
the
That's
need
probably-
is growing, the funding is flat.
Right,
That's
probably one of the things, questions for criteria we need to develop is. Because sometimes we took in the past, like, well, we always funded these guys, so we're gonna fund them, so you guys are out in the cold, somebody that's new. And how do we, so if we're gonna fund these people, that means we're cutting these people who we've always all along
Right.
said we're good.
right.
So those are the kind of questions that. That's a philosophical maybe question that we probably address at some point in that process.
So what I'm hearing is, do we just freeze, and this might not be what you're saying, but do we freeze our grantees and not allow any new people come in? Or do we allow new people coming in and knowing that the other folks we may not be as able to fully fund them?
It's not the question for today, because we're doing this, but it's one of the questions we answer in the next 6 months, so then when January comes, we're gonna go,
Mhm.
and might even make the process perhaps simpler when we actually do the crunching.
I'm just, part of and I do know we need to get. A good process, what I'm thinking, I mean, I'm sitting here thinking, this town is full of people who work with. The aging population, and they have expertise. There's part of me that would like to. Ask them or hear from them. To pose certain questions to them, not big, deep questions, but what works? What keeps people safe? What keeps people in their homes? What nurtures their soul, what nurtures their body? What's. Fill in our knowledge.
You're not talking about people we fund, you're talking about other people that are involved in the industry.
Yeah.
Right,
And caregivers too.
Caregivers and who, that in a sense, represent both institutions and, really grassroots. But some organized way to get input So we can answer that we can ultimately answer that question of what's the reason? Why are we doing this? Because it protects people in this way. And anyway, I mean, we have a lot of knowledge, but, you know, that would either reaffirm or establish some other ways, and it fits with the notion of a rubric where you ask certain questions and then see what kinds of responses you get, and what can you call out of that?
So my comment on that, and I won't say anymore, is that, I think that you could ask many professionals around town that question, and you would get multiple different answers. I think the best way to do that would be to look at the evidence and see what is supported by evidence.
Sure.
That, you know, the things that keep somebody safe in their home as they're aging, and look at the evidence of that, what points to that, because you're gonna get a lot of opinions from people.
I think it's also important to speak to what I call friend and family caregivers. Because in my, at least limited, not statistically significant experience caregiving for elderly people and one disabled person, each individual is different. Each client, if you will, has different needs. So there isn't a formulaic way to approach an elderly person who's too frail to live completely independently anymore. I don't know, there's evidence out there, but I don't think the quantitative evidence covers everything. I do think, you know, input from people who've done caregiving for their relatives, for their friends. I think they have something to say. I don't know how we get to that data, that information, but that's priceless, I think. Caregiving is hard.
And I think that's part of the reason there's diversity in these organizations, because some are in community and much closer to that reality.
I will only add one more thing, and that is, in relation to the freezing of providers and new providers. It has to be an open bid in order to comply with the federal purchase of service, laws and things like that. What your priorities are can guide your decision and who you fund, but it has to be an open bid.
You can't deny someone the ability to apply.
Correct.
Right, yeah.
I thought that's true of Buncombe County too, yeah.
Which is why we participated in the grant fair. What was that, 2 years ago?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Well, getting back to this, I'm wondering if the decision is because we're remarkably close, we have some, you know, but what I was wondering is, can we, with the numbers we've got here, can we reduce by some small percentage to get our 26,000 out of it?
We can. I would, Dan, like to have some discussion about the new applicants. For example, when I read row 11's community health and wellness collective services, it sounded like workshops to me. And as much as, to me, a workshop was not as high a priority as in-home aid or respite. So my thought process is looking at row 11. Do we want to provide them as a group? Do we want to provide them funding at what is the average, or do we want to say, maybe not this year?
My reaction to them was maybe not this year. In part. For the point that you made, but also. It's all well and good to. Counsel people on healthier living, a healthier diet, whatever it is. But a lot of older people are income constrained. And you can say to them, you know, you should eat more vegetables, or whatever it is, and they'd like to do that, but they can't afford it. So my reaction to it was that. Of all of these applicants, it's the one that for me was. The least critical.
Well, the other thing is, I'm only speaking for myself, but my dietary habits are kind of stuck in their ways. Maybe it's me, as a stubborn old lady, yeah.
That's right.
But-
Thank you for the Kit Kat.
Yeah, there's more. So to get back to really focus on trying to get these allocations done. I would like to move forward and do we make the hard decision, not as we look at the voting, so to speak. It looks like a majority of us voted to not fund the workshops. So can we say, not this year, but you're more than welcome to try next year when we're gonna all be advocating in front of our commissioners for a little bit more funding. And then mark that as at 0, and then we're down to like. What, 40? If you put the 0 in the place where the 42 is, yeah. And we're down to 21.
We're both math teachers, so we're just.
Oh,
Depending on the next process.
yeah, and I'm the accountant that's gotta use her fingers. Okay, so, I don't know, Suzanne, you were pretty good at this last time, you go through them one by one? Yeah, maybe,
Okay.
um,
One thing that I thought was interesting, I compared full year 25 allocation to what they asked for and what we have. Buncombe County's in-home aid, they got 231,000 last year. They asked for 45. And our average on that is almost 44. In-home aid is so critical. I'm tempted to give them the 45,000 or at least the average.
so I looked at in-home aid, but I also remember that, for block grant, we allocated them 319,000. So the 319 plus the 45 would probably bring them close to what they requested.
$64.
Yeah, they had requested, they had requested a total of 500,000. We from the block grant, and we provided them 319. So 319 plus the 45 gets them a little closer to their allocation from last year.
I would just want to point out that I didn't, because I helped with this, anyone did, very clear math, because I was trying to be very conscious of the fact that I don't want us to be handing money back next year. And so I took what I know is our SSBG allocation, what we hope is our HCCB allocation, and then this is our match. So the Buncombe County Supplemental Aging Funds, it's our 10% match, that's where it's coming from. So we actually, I thought I had to have 31.9, I had to have 35. something for our match. My finance person was just, we just redid the math, so. And then we had just asked it for that extra bit to add like, that's to maintain where we are, if we were able to add like 1 or 2 more people. So I just want to be clear as to why that 35 was like, that's like a. Like we have to have that, yeah, because it's money given by the, it's the county money, and so that's what's being used for our match.
But again, if we look at, to Suzanne's point is, if you look at how, again, our members voted, all, most of the people said give them the full amount. Yeah.
I just wanted to explain why it
Oh,
was, it's so much different than like years past.
Oh,
And that
right.
kind of thing. So,
Well, I think the shift the shift to more block grant. That's how I kind of saw it, sure, yeah. So. Shall we give it a try at 45, Zach?
Maybe go through the whole list and then
Okay.
figure out the missing bucket at the bottom and then go through and fine tune it maybe.
Works for me, go on,
You
take the
know,
lead.
Blue Ridge Pride was another one. It's so, they asked for 12. We're rounding to 11,008, which rounds up to 12. Maybe first pass, give them a 12. Give them a haircut later if we have to. Harmony Baptist Day Stay. Respite, they asked for 35, we're there at 34, maybe give them 34 even. Evelyn Charities, this is one. They asked for 50, we're kind of coming in at 32. Does anybody have a strong opinion about them one way or another?
They're pretty new, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't think we have a sense, that much of a sense of
They're
what do I
not-
do.
they're a new applicant.
Right.
But not.
They're not a new organization.
Did you just monitor them?
Uh-huh.
Do
I don't know.
you have anything?
I mean, they spend all their funding in February.
On what?
They help older adults stay in their homes, like, prevent evictions and pay their light bills and their rent, their
Okay.
mortgage.
I wasn't sure what stability meant.
Yeah,
Okay.
but they get a lot of funding from other places too.
That's very fun. Maybe for a first pass, round them up to 33,000. I don't know.
I do too.
Mayhack, what they do is so important. They asked for 28, we're actually averaging a tad above that.
Isn't there as 58?
No, there's 20,
Plus 28.
I am 28.
On my spreadsheet from home. I have
Oh, it's their
58.
allocation last year.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You're correct.
Oh, right, that was last year.
Yeah, I did that cell, I'm sorry, that row, the column.
The last year's allocation.
Yeah, I
you
did that, yeah.
Okay, we'll do that too.
So if they ask for 28, can we give them more than they asked for?
I mean, I'm surprised that they asked for so little than last year.
We're supposed to be the cut mode, you're rounding everybody up. I'm not, I think we're going the wrong direction.
So what would your
Oh,
recommendation?
no, I didn't say.
Oh, okay, come
I'm
on
talking,
now.
it's a process question.
Well, our averages are 30, so.
Well, I think the averages are 30 because of member D. I
Yes.
think they were going off of the, what they got this year.
We'll give them 28,000. Memory care. Unless anyone has had a lot of experience dealing with someone with a dementia from any kind of cause, I think it's easy to look at memory care and say, well, they have other sources of funding, they're so well rounded. I think they're critical. We come in at 62. give them an even 62,000. On track. They asked for 39, we're averaging 32, give them 32. At the senior center here, our average is only 12.5. But they're doing so well. And we maybe wanna. I don't know, 14,000 maybe, I'm just pulling a number out of my head,
I don't. What about 12? What about 12 for now? Cause I'm just concerned. They're doing great, they're recovering well, but. Yeah,
You don't want to have to give any money back.
that's right,
Right.
yeah, so that's the balance, yeah.
And that was Unite, you said?
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
Unite.
and that's what I was thinking, they didn't, I mean, I know you explained, Billy, the complication from last year, but is, I mean, they're using the space. What happens if they lose it again? They can't use their money.
then we have working wheels. They asked for 40, we're averaging 33. 33,000 first pass. Center for Conscious Living and Dying, we average 16. Does anybody have a real strong opinion here one way or another? They're new.
No, we have enough, we haven't heard enough about it, I don't think, I don't feel like I really get a good handle on what they're doing.
I went to their website, they have a beautiful website, it says they partner with a lot of other agencies around town. I'm trying to have an open mind.
Well, having sat with my uncle in the last few days of his life.
Yeah.
I think it's a worthwhile service. To be able to offer support.
I agree. 16,000. Community health and wellness, we decided 0. Does anybody know anything about Better Together Transportation? I was happy to see another
I
transportation.
think I passed them on the road the other day.
Okay.
I did too.
Yeah, I was driving over Patton Avenue, I was like, what is that? So it definitely, it sounded like an interesting application because they're trying to make it, what did they say there? 3 rides per, if there was a limit to the number of rides somebody could get. So they were trying to disperse their services, which I was impressed by.
It's a new transportation company, and I've talked to, Eugene Perez, who I don't know if he's the executive director, but when the HCCBG funding went out, he called me and I explained all the requirements, like entering arms, and they really didn't wanna like do any grant funding, but they just thought because they want to make sure that they're providing services to older adults, so the restriction of arms, they didn't apply for HCCBG funding because they didn't know, because arms is difficult for new providers to learn. Then when the Buncombe County funding opened up, then he called me again and I told him all the requirements that's on that sheet that I created and they said they could meet the requirements, so I knew that he was probably gonna apply, and Mount Mobility gives them referrals because Mount Mobility like doesn't always, like, there's certain, like Sundays, like some older adults want to go to church, Better Together, they'll refer it to Better Together. Better Together will take the older adult to church, and there's more flexibility on where the older adults can go with Better Together, so.
The other thing to point out too is I know many times will have, because if the VA would have veterans who use mountain mobility to go different places, maybe, for example. And they have to be out for the whole day in order to go to the grocery store, you know? So I don't know if maybe this transportation would allow individuals who don't have that kind of stamina to go to the store and then come back home.
Yeah, and it's hard on older adults to be out all day, so. I don't know about Better Together, but I read their application, and one thing that they do that Mountain Mobility doesn't is if. If older adults have a lot of groceries, they take them into the house for 'em, whereas Mountain Mobility, you can only get on the bus what you can carry, and they won't. Maybe there's some bus drivers that take it to the house, but as a rule, they don't, so. That's what I noticed on Better Together's application, that they mentioned they actually take the groceries into the house.
Well, having come from a metropolitan area into this area, transportation to me is just a vital to older adults. And so I support it Better Together.
Are they approved for Medicaid transport?
Excuse me?
Are they approved for like Medicaid transport or are they just
I don't know.
individual? I'm just curious.
I
Like,
could ask one of the ladies here.
yeah, they can get reimbursed. Yes, I was just curious.
Excuse me?
I said I could ask one of the NEMT ladies, I think they're here till 7.
Do we give them a 41,000 first pass, or do we want to give them more?
Let's go with the 41 for now.
And then there's Pisco Legal. What do we think about Pisco Legal?
Well, we're making them whole. In fiscal year 2025.
Can we give them a pass here this year? Since we're making them whole on the grant side.
You know, one of the, I mean, I was just looking at all of these, this was one of the agencies that had 2 people recommending no funding. Which comes really from our last discussion, I think.
Yeah. What do we think? Since we're making them whole on the other side.
First pass, 0.
First pass 0. Be my suggestion. And then Mountain Care's transportation issue and, 33,000. See where the numbers add up? What are the easiest haircuts here? Do we think?
This mountain mobility is mountain care is the adult day center. They contract with Mountain Mobility, if I'm correct. So this is to assure them that their folks get to their site.
So they would pay that to Mountain Mobility, basically.
I think this might be used for a different transportation provider. Cause I think they have a unit rate
Yeah.
for mountain mobility through home and community care block grant, but I think this will open up an alternate transportation. Provider for them that can get people more regularly to the program.
Would that be instead of the Better Together?
Better Together does provide rides to Mountain Care. They said in their application, but, Mount Care has contracted with other providers too, and as Zach said, it's not to Mountain Mobility, because
Yeah, so they were coordinating, I think, wasn't it about a year ago that Mountain Care started coordinating their own transportation outside of just
Yeah,
using
Because
Mountain
Mountain
Care?
Mobility
Yeah.
couldn't.
But I'm just saying now with this new guy better together, it seems like we got now 3 transportation.
There's been a deficit in the transportation services available. So with Mountain Care, right after COVID, especially when the transportation, when Mountain Mobility was having a hard time getting drivers to come back and there was a real deficit there. Mountain Care has had problems getting their clients to them. So they use Mountain Mobility when they can, they use their other providers, and Better Together is new to the space, but Better Together also will take people to church, to funerals.
Right,
to
I
things
heard that, but I'm
yeah.
just saying, it seems like the Mountain Care people applied for this maybe before they knew about Better Together.
Well, Better Together isn't necessarily gonna take them to Mountain Care, so they're kind of two total different things. So you would get on Better Together and you might not go to Mountain Care. But in order for you to get to the adult daycare, Mountain Care, you've got to have some type of transportation. It is possible that Mountain Care contracts with Better Together or Mountain Mobility or Out and About or whatever the other agency is that you.
Okay.
We have 6,000.
Ooh,
You know, we could take 1,000 off the six of the least critical service providers. And 500 off the top of. Up at the top, we have the county. We're giving them 45. Blue Ridge Pride, we're giving them 12.
they have a duplication of services. Don't they? Unless somebody discriminates against them. Don't they duplicate services?
Which,
The Blue Ridge Pride, they have a food pantry, but other places have food pantries.
I am unfamiliar with. other-
Well, they said they're working on it.
When we look at these programs, it's not the whole organization, it's the specific program. So Generation Plus is what we are funding at Blue Ridge Pride.
In the description, never mind. I didn't understand the description. And they said they were doing food and clothing shelter and mental health services. Which to me, other people are doing, but that's just me.
but I mean, they do. Blue Ridge Pride does provide that, but there's a lot of, it's to provide that for LGBTQ plus elders in a safe space.
But what you're saying is other places are not safe. They're discriminated against in these other
That's right.
places.
Like they
Thought that
they
was
don't
illegal.
feel safe sometimes going to other places. So they're among their peers and it's a safe place to receive food or mental health counseling, things like that.
Tailored to their needs.
Yeah,
And the-
tailored to their needs and understanding, yeah.
And the other issue here, I think, is that there's far more need than these in the community than these agencies are able to meet. So I'm not that concerned that you've got a couple of transportation companies because one of them's not gonna cover everything. 2 or 3 of them, you know, think about it, 3 rides in a month, how do you manage your life like that? That's hard.
Well, I'm comfortable with personally, I'm okay with the 12 with Blue Ridge. I'm looking at the bigger dollar folks. And the first one down the list is memory care.
Yeah.
So what if we go to 60 with memory care instead of 62? And then. Financial counseling.
Take, on track from 32 to 30.
Yeah, we can do that.
Just two. Working wheels, maybe, take them to 31.
I was thinking more about the Center for Conscious Living and Drive, bringing them down. To 14,
Yes,
to 14.
that's a better idea, yeah. Let's do it, yeah.
So. Um. Zach, can you do me a favor, please, and go all the way at the top and let me write down exactly where we are right now?
Yeah.
So it's 45. Let's see, I'll get a clean sheet of paper. 45, 12, 34, 33, 28, 60, 30, 12, 33, 14. 30, 14, 0, 41, 0, 33.
And what was the reason for not funding fiscal legal services? I understand the other one.
The one for not funding fiscal legal is that we made them whole in fiscal year 2025. And we're gonna take it back up for next year.
And on the scale of criticality. And they have other sources of funds, but we made them whole on the grant side, so. Or we're making them whole on the grant side.
And they're more than welcome to contact me directly.
How much additional funding are they getting to be made whole this year? Like, how much will that be?
Is one of the last numbers that I gave you.
It was like
Somebody wrote it down.
28,000 or
28.
28 or 33.
Thirty-three thousand.
33,000.
That doesn't count for what they may add in
Okay.
for the month of June as well.
So 33 plus whatever June.
And then, did they get HCCBG funding
For this year,
for 26?
26, yeah, they have
They
to.
have some. Okay. Oh, they have to, is that what you said?
Right.
Yeah.
We have to, yeah, I know that, yeah.
Mhm. Never easy. And I think this group is wonderful, their expertise and their guidance. So. I don't know what else I can say. You guys are, it's a hard decision. Thank you, Suzanne, for leading us through this. I guess my question is, any discussions, conversation?
On this,
At this point, yes.
I just wanted to ask you a question about my membership. I
We can
don't know
talk
if this is a
offline.
good time.
Yeah, we can talk offline
Okay.
after the session. So are we good for? Somebody's got to smile. I mean, it comes down to, I wish I could give everybody everything they wanted. Yeah, I really do. But we don't have that luxury. And each of us individually put a lot of time and thought and energy and emotion and our collective experience with dealing with older adults.
You know, I think that the question of our reason about why we fund or not fund is captured in what you just said, is that some of the reason is we don't have enough money to fund the way we would like to. So we have to fund based on what we think are priorities. And maybe we'll get better at that. But I think we're pretty good at it right now, but we can always get better.
And I have seen this, I've been in this, with this committee for a few years, and every year we just refine and get better. So that's what we're gonna do next month. We'll look at priorities, look at what works, what keeps people in their homes, and look to caregivers and the extended support groups.
I'm just glad we had money coming down, because I was expecting zero. Yeah, I was not optimistic. So when I saw a little bit of money, I smiled. Like, ooh.
Yes, I'm delighted with this, you don't know how much I am happy that the county came through for us, meaning older adults in the community, because I are one. So,
My concern, the only concern I have is, it's not like we have a reset button on September 27th. Or that everything's gonna be good from that point on. It's just what I keep hearing, even months after Helene. And how much more expenditures are gonna go out, even after all the officials have begged and pleaded for funding and have received some, but still want more, and how it goes on and on. But what I've seen about how budgets are affected and stuff, different agencies, you know, is that this is a rippling effect, and it's gonna take. It won't be over a year out, it'll ripple through a few fiscal years. So I have concerns about that, you know, that I'm glad for what we got to. Delegate, just that concerns about that in the future. Because they're gonna be observing the incredible costs of all this over a period of time. Not in a short term, so that concerns me. So flat funding wins.
well,
I'll be happy with flat funding at this point.
well, flat funding has been the story of funding for older adults. As long as I shouldn't say as long as I can remember, but yeah, it's kind of the way of the world at this point. But to that point, what I would, two things came to mind. One is the providers do give us a mid-year and end of year valuation, and it's, you know, and so bringing that forward to the commissioners and to people in the community, I think is helpful. And just reminding folks that, you know, this population is growing. And there are needs, and I'm gonna get to the point where I need transportation.
I'll bring you to the meetings.
Oh, thank you. And, you know, I kind of live out in a rural area. You know, so.
We're all on that train sooner or later.
There's only one other option.
There's one other-
So it's.
Somebody runs a stoplight, and you're it, yeah, you're hit, yeah.
Well, I think, I can't thank you all enough for all your hard work. I don't know how to say it anymore. Thank you. And,
Thank you for being our fearless leader.
yeah, I don't know about that. But, no, thank you all for everything you do. I don't know if there's anything else, Billy, we have on our agenda or any announcements.
No,
No,
anything else.
okay.
I just
well,
want to thank Taylor for paying into our social security. That's just supporting us.
Absolutely, my pleasure. Keep it going a few more years.
We appreciate you. Okay, well, if, from what I am hearing, we all have homework to think about and being concise with our priorities. And, we will see each other again in July. I know it's June already, July. 1, 2,
30.
20, the 4th, no, the 23rd, I think. Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
23rd, July 23rd.
Leave this light on if you just turn it off on the way out.
Okay,
All right.
well, thank you, everybody. That sounds like there's a little bit of a storm outside, so be careful traveling home. And thank you, everybody online.